Welcome to the Mini Break, your daily podcast for the big storylines, results, and controversies from the tennis world. Today is Friday, December 12th. On today's podcast, it's time for our second year-end award show. It's time for us to put a bow on the 2025 ATP season. What a year it was, of course. At the top, felt like the foundation of a rivalry that may very well define the next decade of men's tennis, to see Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz capture all four majors for a second consecutive season, to play in the finals of all of the big events, it felt like, against one another. Yeah, we know those two are destined for even more success moving forward. But for me, and perhaps many others, the most entertaining part of this 2025 ATP season, the messiness that followed behind those two. So many different players made a push to be the fourth best guy, ostensibly, behind those two. And, of course, Novak Djokovic, who we can also discuss on today's podcast. Trying to sort out that messiness in handing out awards, it's a tough task. It's a task I'm looking forward to trying to accomplish today. And if we're going to try to climb such a monumental mountain, we have only one man who we would have join us on such a foray. He is, of course, the man who has joined us so frequently throughout the course of this 2025 season, a man you all know best as the lead editor for allthingstennis.com. He joined me on our women's year-end award show and at times is very frequently a co-host of this Mini Break podcast feed. Thus, we count him as a dear friend and a returning champion as always. Welcome back to the show, David Kane. DK, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a full 24 hours since I've seen that smiling face, but nevertheless, here we are again, ready to set off on another award show adventure. You excited? How are you feeling today?
From magnificent to monumental. I'm glad to be here, Alex.
It's good. It's a callback early. And again, for those of you looking for our WTA year-end award show, you don't have to search very far. You can scroll down on the Mini Break podcast feed. You can find both the full episode and clips from it over on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. By the way, it will be the same story for this episode, and we appreciate all of you who are gazing upon our smiling faces as we try to break down this 2025 ATP season. And DK, let's get right to it, because certainly, again, it was a messy year in men's tennis, maybe the messiest I've covered in our 8 years now here at Cracked Racquets. And as always, before we get to the awards, we've got 12 of them. I'll break them down before we start, but let's grade this ATP season because it was fascinating. Again, at the top, you have these two titans of the sport. Jannik Sinner, 24 years old. Carlos Alcaraz, 22 years old. Each of them were flirting with 90% win percentages all season long. Between them, obviously, they capture the four major titles. They capture countless 1000s. They capture the year-end championships. The gap for just about all of the season, as we've pointed out on this show, between them and whomever was third place in the points race, at times it was the same as the gap between that third place person and me and you on this podcast. That's how significant the gap in success was between those two men and everyone else from a consistency standpoint. And yet, you still had moments, pockets throughout the course of the season, whether it be Indian Wells, Jack Draper's crowning moment. You had Jakub Menchik, of course, in Miami. By the way, Joao Fonseca started the year with a bang. He, of course, wins the Next Gen Finals, beats Rublev Australian Open round one. You had Musetti looking like the third best player in the world for the duration of the clay court season. You had the Fritz resurgence on the grass courts, the Felix resurgence down the late season home stretch, a sneaky fun race to the year-end finals. There were moments. There were things to celebrate. By the way, there were a ton of injuries along the way as well. Guys like, Tsitsipas, Fils, Hurkacz, Runa's obviously injured to end the season. Draper missed so much time, pretty much the entire back half of the year. Mixed bag of storylines you can turn to. We're going to hit a lot of them here on today's show, but just 10,000-foot view more broadly. DK, how do you grade this 2025 ATP season?
I mean, it really depends on what you value. Either you value more the excellence of the top two players in the world, that being Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, or do you sort of undervalue or look more askance at the gap between them and the rest of the field? I think, there have been many years on the WTA like this in the past where we've had a Serena Williams and Ash Barty and Iga Swiatek be far and away the best player in the world, and there be a massive gap between themselves and the field. And I don't think we would be as forgiving of those seasons with respect to the field. Maybe Serena Williams is an exception, of course, but when you think of other players who have been far and away number one and having no close competitors, those seasons tend to be looked at with a bit of a side eye. That said, the combined excellence of Alcaraz and Sinner really from wall to wall does, in my opinion, kind of outweigh the negatives that you could point to in the ATP season. I mean, I think if the WTA was an A plus, I think the ATP season is probably the ATP season is a hard A minus, where I think the excellence of Sinner and Alcaraz. I was there. I'm pretty sure I said that a few months ago, and I think based on the ATP finals, you ended with a Sinner Alcaraz final. They're both really good, so I think it's an A minus.
It's fascinating to start with that perspective because certainly as a glass half full guy, there's a lot to celebrate. Sinner had the weight of the world on his shoulders defending that Australian Open title, knowing a suspension was looming, and lo and behold, he wins that final in dominant fashion over Zverev. Then you have Alcaraz, who was just so good. The entirety of the clay court season, the crowning moment, of course, overcoming match points to beat Sinner in that final, and to have a match like that over the course of the year, it raises the floor of what the grade can be, right? When you have moments like that, can't be any lower than a B. Obviously, Sinner had to win that Wimbledon title just to right the ship in that rivalry, make all of us feel like he wasn't as good as he was going to be overcome by his biggest rival, and he does win it. And he answers a question. Now he's a slam away, a slam where he's had match points for the title from the career slam. I mean, again, he wins a second straight year-end finals without dropping a set. And yet still Alcaraz owns the head-to-head over the course of the year against Sinner. There are so many intriguing nuances. Again, fuck it. I'm dedicating the first 3 days of next week, 3 full days of off-season coverage, to all things Sinner and Alcaraz. They are that significant of a story, that consequential moving forward. And yet, and maybe this adds to the fascination, so I'm going to agree with you for A-, but my case is different. A lot of it comes to the messiness behind it and how much joy I took in watching it unfold. And yeah, it wasn't always the prettiest, but I would have said this about those WTA seasons in the late 2010s as well. To see an entire generation, a generation of guys who this podcast was built in a foundation of covering upon. We did a full next-gen series on guys like Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas, Rublev, Berrettini, Tiafoe, Shapovalov, guys who, again, none of them are 30 years old yet. And none of them are in again, Rublev sees his 5-year tour final streak snapped. Medvedev, obviously, he was ranked 20 in the world at one point this season, finishes outside the top 10. He's been a staple of top 5 tennis for half a decade plus. Tsitsipas is outside the top 20 to end this year. The disappearance of a full generation, a generation that still amongst them has one collective slam title, that Medvedev 2021 U.S. Open run, is that's what keeps them from being the lost generation, but still far under the over-under that would have been set for them. It's just so fascinating because of that, you had the space for Alcaraz and Sinner to dominate to the degree that they did. You had the space for guys like Draper, Musetti, Felix, others, Lechechka, if you want to throw in Fonseca, to have some space to breathe and make a leap and have us paying attention to it. You also maybe could knock it because of the injuries. Again, Arthur Fils had all this sunshine swing momentum. We don't see him the rest of the year. Draper, all this momentum coming out of the first half. We don't see him really the entirety of the last 5 months. There's just a lot. And because of that tonnage, that's what gets me to A-, is whatever storyline you were looking for. I didn't mention Sasha Bublik. I'm going to talk about him a lot today. Whatever you were looking for, you could find in this 2025 ATP season. That's my case for the A-. Final words can go to you. And apologies for another monologue.
Yeah, I don't feel as great about the rest of the field as you do. I think, to your point, a lot of them were injured for most of the year. And I think if you're grading the health of the tour, I think the way that the tour is built, it is built to feature the top 8 men at the end of the season. That's why the ATP finals and the WTA finals is the top 8. And we really struggled to come up with a credible top 8, I think, by the end of the season. Whereas I think the WTA was a lot more easy to come up with those eight women, give or take Amira Andreeva. But I think for the men, I think you look at Sinner and Alcaraz, the way that they have slid so seamlessly into that like Nadal Djokovic role, that rivalry at the top of the men's game, really does obscure for most men's tennis fans the reality of what's going on underneath them. I think Shanghai was an interesting look at what happens when you don't have like Alcaraz and an underperforming Sinner. Like all of a sudden, the bottom just falls completely out of the current ATP landscape. So I'm not in a rush to give the rest of the field a tremendous amount of kudos. It really is the Sincaraz award it's Sincaraz points that I'm giving to bump you up to an A-.
Fair enough. And again, that combined, their age 46, average age 23, 24, 22 split. Like, we're going to have them for the next half decade plus, and that boosts your collective health because you have superstars. You have all-time players at the peaks of their powers competing simultaneously. So
already household names with huge fan bases.
Exactly.
Like it's real.
And like, all right, let's talk about it here. Well, it leaks into Player of the Year, so actually we can talk about it there because certainly, again, the Player of the Year race is going to come down to two men, Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner. And obviously, Player of the Year, one of the awards we're going to discuss today, one of 12 awards I've got for all of you listeners as, again, I view award shows as the opportunity to tell the story of a 2025 season. I think you should be able to look at a ballot. I think you should be able to listen to this podcast, and you should have a grasp on everything that emerged, the various twists, turns of 2025, much to your chagrin, it looks like.
Although,
DK.
point of order, let's take these nominations with a grain of salt because lest we forget, the honorable mentions to Alex Gruskin's Player of the Year are for people who most pointedly did not play well the whole year. Each nominee is noted late season, clay season, last 6 months, when he's healthy. That should automatically disqualify them, in my opinion, from being a part of the Player of the Year discussion.
Well, guess what? That's why they were crazy. That's why they were honorable mentions. They weren't candidates. They were honorable mentions, and that's why it had its own honorable mention.
There's no honor in those mentions.
DK, I don't want to burden you by what has been. And so I did a full podcast dedicated to my honorable mentions, so you don't have to. I just had to
point those out because they were particularly infuriating, but go on.
Well, I do what I do. Again, I got to send you something to keep you intrigued. They say anger doesn't build trust nor intrigue, but it keeps things spicy.
Build character, it shows
you got to keep things spicy in every relationship, DK. All right, Player of the Year, of course, most improved. Sneaky good season, which is literally just the Thorn and DK side, but it's players.
It's the Alex Gruskin Memorial Award.
Well, it's the Cracked Racquets Award. It's the here's 5 minutes you're not going to hear on any other show that DK listens to far more frequently than this show over the course of the year. Best storyline, biggest surprise, biggest missed opportunity. Did the window close? Feels particularly pertinent for this ATP crew.
It's a long list there.
Yeah. Had themselves a moment. Again, those are the remember this week, remember that moments that happen throughout the course of every season. Newcomer of the year, 21 and under prospects, and closest to popping off. Now, again, let's start with Player of the Year because it is fascinating to me that even though he missed the entirety of the Sunshine Swing, even though he missed Monte Carlo, even though he missed Madrid, Jannik Sinner had a push for world number one and ultimately ends this season just 550 points behind Carlos Alcaraz in that race. Again, the gap between Jannik Sinner and Sasha Zverev ends the year the same as the gap between Zverev in third and me and you, DK, sitting here today. Actually, the gap between him and Sinner is bigger, I believe. Nope, that's a lie. It's 5,000. No. I stand by my point. I'm right. It's bigger, the gap between Sinner and Zverev, than the gap between Zverev and us sitting at home. So it just speaks to, like, he did it in 8 months of tennis. And, again, you look at the numbers, it's remarkable how close they are statistically. Alcaraz 71-9, that's an 88.8 win percentage. Sinner 58-6, 90.6. And, by the way, since the end of the 2023 U.S. Open, so we're talking 26 months of tennis, Jannik Sinner has won over 90% of his matches. We're talking 04 to 08 Federer. We're talking best years of Rafa, best years of Djokovic. That's the sort of run Jannik Sinner's been on now for 26 months. Again, win percentage is similar. You look for a slight advantage Sinner. You look for wins at the majors, slight advantage Sinner. He's 26-2, Alcaraz 24-2. Against top 20 opponents, Alcaraz 27-6, Sinner 25-4. Against top 10 opponents, Alcaraz 17-4. Sinner actually eclipsed Alcaraz with his tour finals run, 19-4 against top 10 opponents overall on the year. Again, total titles, Alcaraz beats him out 8-6, but 11 finals to Sinner's 10. And again, he made the final or further in all but 2 of the events he played this season. One of them he withdrew from with injury. It's amazing how narrow the gap ended up between these two statistically. And by pure rate of return, efficiency, matches played, Sinner was better in a by-match basis, ever so slightly, than Carlos Alcaraz was this year. By the way, you'll love this, DK. My final stat for you. Jannik Sinner finishes first in hold percentage and first in break percentage for the year. He's the first player ever to do that. Djokovic never did. Federer never did. Nadal never did. Nope. Jannik Sinner's the first. And that matches the eye test because when you don't have a shot against Sinner, he fucking kills you. And yet, this is the case against. And then I swear I'll shut up and let you go. He was suspended this season. And can you really offer the Player of the Year award to a player who has that sort of blemish on his resume from this year? Okay. It's as simple as that takeover?
No, it really is. I think it just, listen, I think in any other season, you stack up these two resumes and you see one person won 2 slams, one person won 2 slams, and the other one won the year-end championships. That should have been the tiebreaker. But I think you cannot, in good conscience, give the Player of the Year 2025 to a player who missed 3 months of the year for really any reason. Even if he was just injured for several months and came back, I still think the player who had the more consistent year from January to November and showed up and played the whole time should get more credit, and then much less a doping suspension or an anti-rule doping violation suspension. And up against a player that he trailed in head-to-head, 4-1, basically? I think the head-to-head, the suspension. And look, that doesn't disqualify Sinner from anything else. It doesn't disqualify him from winning slams. It doesn't disqualify him from being a future Hall of Famer. He is, he served his time and he's back on tour as it should be. But when it comes to this one particular thing, Player of the Year 2025, I don't think he should be in contention. I think it's very clearly Carlos Alcaraz. 2 more slams, his most consistent year yet, finishes the year number 1, another great, run, a first really great run at the ATP finals, a move for him in that direction to show that he's a player that can compete throughout the year. It's Carlos. End of story. It doesn't really matter what the stats are.
They've already played 17 times, which, by the way, means they're on that track for that special 35, 40, 50 numbers that only Djokovic, Nadal, Federer's head-to-heads could hit because they were that good for that long consistently. They're on pace for that.
It's really too soon to be starting to have these discussions, but I do wonder
at
what point, not the question I'm about to ask, which is that we're on track for, Sinner and Alcaraz to kind of immediately mirror these so-called once-in-a-generation stats set by Nadal and Djokovic. And I'm wow, kind of takes the shine off of what, the big three. We spent 20 years talking about the big three, and we've immediately, there is no gap between the Rafa Novak, duopoly into the Sinkraz duopoly.
Well, there kind of was, though. We had the early 2020s, the first half of this decade, where these guys started to emerge, but there was that 4-year run where, again, it gets back to what we were talking about in grading the season, the fact that the next gen, which had some good players, Medvedev reached world number 1. Zverev's done everything but win a major. Tsitsipas has made major finals. Ruud's made major finals. Berrettini made a major final. None of them could grab a title over the late-stage Djokovic. And by the way, that's something if Alcaraz, Sinner are you're mapping out their pathway to 20. And by the way, I always joke around, and I would still say this after the 2025 season. Are either of them the greatest of all time? No. But they're not eliminated from the greatest of all time discussion. And 99.999999999% of players are especially eliminated by age 24. It speaks to how good they are. It speaks to, by the way, why they're the only 2 Tier 1 candidates for Player of the Year. If you throw out the Cincinnati result, Sinner was actually 2-3 against Alcaraz this season, and he had the match points in the French Open final as well. It wasn't as bad as it did feel through the front half, certainly, of this season, especially after Alcaraz got him at Roland Garros. It's just again, to be suspended, though, for a doping violation, that is a remarkable blemish to have on your resume. And how he responded to that is a testament to who he is as a player, as an athlete, all these different things. It's not as though Alcaraz is lacking. That's the case for why it has to be Alcaraz. Is 1, he doesn't have that. 2, he has the 3-2 head-to-head advantage. 3, again, you look for him over the course of this season, 71-9 overall on the year. He had the stretch on the clay, wins Monte Carlo, injured in the Barcelona final, but makes the final there, wins Rome, wins Roland Garros. Like, that's some Rafa type shit. And follows that into the Wimbledon final as well, wins the U.S. Open. Like, that middle chunk, the middle 2/3 of the season, Alcaraz was the number one player in the world just about every week. And it's a longer...
Which is new for Carlos.
Yeah, exactly.
He typically was a bit more of an up-and-down player, basically until the clay season this year. Like, the first 3 months were not amazing, but he was there, and he was playing well, but not nearly as well as he did to the end of the year.
Bad Indian Wells loss to Draper.
Oof.
Got beaten soundly by Djokovic in Australia. And, yeah, those are the only two blemishes. Like, the rest of the way, he lost to Rune in the Barcelona final. He lost to Sinner in the Wimbledon final. He lost to Fritz at Laver Cup. Lost to Nori, round one Paris Masters. Lost to Jannik Sinner, tour finals final. Pretty unimpeachable, the Carlos Alcaraz resume. Sinner still not beat him in top 10 wins. That's crazy to me. Like, again, to miss, and it's not as though he missed insignificant events. He missed 4 1,000s. That's typically where the top 10 wins come for a guy like Jannik Sinner. And he's still...
That's a function of the draw. Like, he just got to play a few more top 10 players, basically.
I know. But he still beat him. Like, it's just
but as we discussed, from 3 on, it really isn't like, is a top 10 win a top 10 win anymore? It's kind of like...
Well, you got to inflate the numbers.
It's a Synchraz.
No, you got to inflate the numbers, and they did. I agree. I went Alcaraz as well. And again, those are the only tier 1 candidates. DK was making fun of me because in my honorable mention, I said late. I was just like, again, who else in the world this year even came close to playing world number 1 tennis? That's what the honorable mention was for me, where it's like, did anyone even come close?
None of these guys.
Late season FAA? You didn't see shades of world number... Okay.
Were shades of world number 1? No.
Clay Court Musetti beat Tsitsipas and Dibbenauer a couple of times. Played Alcaraz close. Was up a set. I think
maybe Musetti had made the final in Paris or something, or won it, God forbid.
Last 6 months of Bublik?
I mean, world number 1 in tennis hipster hearts, but not world number 1 in rankings.
The other case is healthy Jack Draper, who loses to Alcaraz in Australia, but then beats him, beats Rune, beats Fritz, like a real run to to the Indian Wells title, excuse me. Loses round 1 Miami, but it's to the eventual champion Menchik. Then finals Madrid.
That was this year. That I barely
Draper,
remember. And that should be a big
Draper
match
was on my list. Like, you can go check the podcast. We did top 10 first Monday of every month. Draper was 4 on my list, and I felt best about him in that 4 spot than I did about anyone else I placed at 4 over the course of this season. And that's again, Alcaraz and Sinner were the only options to this question. But if you're even having fun with another case, it's like, well, Jack Draper did some shit this year. And that's why he earns... I mean, he doesn't deserve a breath in this conversation. It's honorable mention, not tier 1, but it's why I brought it up. It's why I wrote it down.
I think when you have 12 categories, there is space for these 4 guys that is not in the player of the year discussion, as I'm sure they'll pop up later on in nominees 2 through 12. But go on.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because that brings us to our next category, where indeed here comes Jack Draper, who has to be a candidate for most improved. And again, there are tiers to most improved. If you jump from a tier 2 to a tier 1 player, you are on the precipice of competing and winning the biggest titles. That's the biggest jump you can make in this sport. That's the most valued jump. It jumps you into tier 1 of most improved. But there are other leaps, as I like to say, 30 to top 15, 50 to top 35, 100 to top 50, even just ensconcing yourself in that top 100. I've got 2 categories to honor all of the different players who made these sorts of leaps. And again, talked about my honorable mentions on a separate podcast, Wednesday's show here. So DK, I got 5 tier 1 candidates for you. You give me your case and why. Lorenzo Musetti, Sasha Bublik, Jack Draper, Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, and I think Ben Shelton is a name others would leave out. I am not going to leave him out of my tier 1 candidates. Who's your pick and why?
No, and in fact, he would be my pick.
Wow!
Compared between him and... It comes down to him and Jack Draper, because it's like who stepped up and won a Masters title this year. Like, I feel like both of them we knew could be factors at slams to make a slam quarterfinal, a slam semifinal, but could they... compete week in, week out with the rank and file and make it deep at a Masters and win one. Both of them won a Masters, but I think I would give it to Ben because he played longer through the year and made it to the ATP finals. He didn't play great when he got there, but still managed to string together a season from January to November that was top 8 worthy and included a Masters title. I would give it to him. Yeah, I wouldn't think to not put him in, especially up against this competition.
Well, I don't agree about this competition. Let me quickly make the case for the others. Because I think Musetti belongs in that tier of the conversation as well. Actually, so does Boop. Like, Davidovich Fokina was, look, this is a guy who forever had been flirting with MI 500.
You put him there hoping I would pick him, be honest.
Well, he's a guy who's been flirting with 500 forever, and for all of this year, he was a top 15 player in the world. And a lot of it was at 250s, other than the round of 16 he made in Australia. But he was consistent every week in a way
If he'd
that
won a title, maybe I would have given it to him.
yeah, the DC final hurts. But again, every week he was quarterfinals or further. Every week he was in the mix. And again, DC, Canada, like he was playing some really good ball over the course of this summer. Really good ball to start the year as well in February. He had the best season of his career. He was in the top 15 for the majority of it. He belongs on this list because that's a significant leap. The case for Bublik is from May 13th, the Turin Challenger, through the year end. He went 35-10. This is a guy whose career win percentages in the seasons leading up to this season: 51, 46, 55, 53, 46, 50. Like, again, played 35-10 ball for 5-6 months consecutively. And during that span, made 2 Slam quarterfinals. Slam quarterfinal Roland Garros, round of 16 U.S. Open, but beats Tommy in one of the most fun matches of the event. He was playing his way into the tour finals. Like, he was still alive in the Paris quarterfinals, having just beat Taylor Fritz to keep his hopes alive with a match against Demon that he then wins to advance to the semis. And it's like, dude, if you beat Felix, you've got a path. That we're saying that about a Sasha Bublik, who did that not at age 22, but at age 28, like, finally, it just clicked for him. Like, how do we not value that in this Tier 1 category? He is legitimately a top, like, you can make a case he was top 10.
I mean, look, I think for Bublik, the ceiling has always been high and the floor has always been low. And I think we've seen this movie before with Alexander Bublik.
Not for 6 months.
He played really well 2 years ago, was up to 17, and then immediately drops back down. Then now he's back up. I mean, can he continue this into next year? I could very easily see him, whittling away his own point total by the end of next year. I don't buy it. Like, I'm glad to see it. I'm glad he's part of the conversation, but I don't know if this is an improvement for him as much as if there was like a getting your act together award, then I think Bublik would get it. But even then, I would be reluctant to give it to him because I don't know what he's going to do next year.
7-4 against the top 20, 5-4 against the top 10, 8 quarterfinals during that stretch, wins the titles consecutively, Stade, Kitzbühel. Yeah, it was against lesser competition. He still went out and won the damn things. And again, 35-10 for 6 months. We've never seen that from him. I hope this is who we get for next year because, again, he's always had these sorts of skills, but he actually actualized it this year. That's an improvement. So he has to be in this list. Again, the Musetti clay court season was exceptional. It shouldn't be forgotten. You look at what Lorenzo Musetti was able to do over the course of the clay court season. Started, of course, in making that final in Monte Carlo where he beats Tsitsipas, beats Demon, respectively. Then he goes on, makes semifinals Madrid, beats them both again. Semifinals Rome, beats Zverev, Medvedev before getting knocked out by Alcaraz. Roland Garros semifinal, knocked out by Alcaraz. Again, his losses on clay were Alcaraz, Draper, Alcaraz, Alcaraz. In terms of a prolonged stretch of being the 4th best player in the world, that's 2 months for Lorenzo Musetti. 2 months that, other than Jack Draper, I don't know if anyone else was 4th best in the world clearly for 2 months consecutively. Again, when he first broke through in the COVID times, late 2020, he beats Nishikori, beats Wawrinka in whatever that event was. Like, this is the actualization of the player you always thought Musetti can be. And he's found it at age 23. It feels like he can be in the mix to compete for tour finals moving forward. If I gave you the over-under of 0.5, you probably take the over. Career high hold percentage, and that you see it measurably in the first serve, first forehand, just being more assertive with it. It was a significant improvement. And I think he has to be in this discussion as well.
I guess. I mean, like making the Wimbledon semifinal last year, now making the semifinal of a slam that I would have thought he would have done before Wimbledon. So that's why, I feel like he already made a big improvement last year. And this is just sort of it's an improvement, but it's not as big of an improvement as it was from the year before to last year, basically.
Fair, but then he had the slump right after French Open where he loses 4 or 5 matches. Then he makes the U.S. Open quarters, and then he is in the race for the tour finals. Like, he finished his season strong. I think he has to be there. Ben, again, had the 4th most wins of any player at the majors this season. Again, trailed just Djokovic, Sinner, Alcaraz. Then comes Ben, who made semifinals.
And he was injured at one.
Yeah, he made semifinals, exactly. Made at least 4th round of all of them. He qualifies for his first tour finals. And again, when you're drafting the weaponry of, I'm trying to beat Sinner and Alcaraz, I'm building a player to beat them. I have to pick from the existing skills. You're picking Ben Serve in your first 5 picks, no matter whom you are, because that's a skill you want, his attacking mentality, that belief that he plays with on every point. Like, you just have to be that sort of competitor to beat those sorts of guys. Backhand return took another mini step forward. Like, there are obvious improvements to make. He's just better week in, week out than he once was. I think the Draper leap is more consequential because, again, I think Draper's best tennis was better than anyone else on this list, so he would be my pick. But I think I'd go Draper 1, Musetti 2, Shelton 3.
I mean, if it's a poll, if people are voting, I assume people would be voting on Vachereau, who you buried in the honorable mention section. I feel like
you can't just give him for one. Don't worry,
the flashiness of the Shanghai title. I feel like people would vote for him. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to.
That's crazy.
I feel like that's what people would do.
No, and again, there are other players like Lechechka is a top 15 guy now. That's a real leap. Fonseca might be one of the 25 best players in the world already. That's a leap. Menchik beat Djokovic in a 1,000 final. That's an improvement. Kaboli, Lerner Tien, yes, Val Vachereau. First 4 months of Cerundolo where he was top 10. Year-end Felix. Like, there are some significant improvements that occurred with the space created, again, by the vacuum.
Yeah, I know,
but
for Vachereau, it's like from nothing to a Masters title. It's like that's a bigger
but that's a moment. Is that an improvement or is that a moment?
But then he showed up the next week and played pretty well, right?
That's true. He was good in Paris. Yeah. We'll get to Val Vachereau. Don't worry. I got space for him.
I'm sure there's like 18 categories.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, I'm going Draper. You go Shelton. That's
best
fine
match
with me.
between cousins at a Masters.
Oh.
You'll have like multiple.
We've got the storyline.
Nominees.
Don't you worry. Let's move next to the sneaky good season because, again, ill-defined, I know, but there are players who are now at career highs or reach them this year, and again, those should be noted. And you wonder, are they pieces moving forward? I got 7 guys on this list for you, DK.
Just asking
don't
questions.
worry. We don't have to go through the honorable mentions. I spent plenty of time on it already. Alex Muller, Luciano Darderi, Gab Diallo, Naomi Munar, Arthur Rinderknecht, Corentin Moutet, or Zizou Bergs.
What I will say is I was in the car with my co-pilot Stephanie in Cincinnati, and we were talking about like players we could like try to make inroads with, like new like up and coming players, and one of the names that I had listed was Darderi because I was like, he's like in the top 40 now. Like I guess that is the definition.
3 titles.
You incepted me because I'm like, he's having a sneaky good season. I guess that is the definition of a sneaky good season. That said, I kind of want to give it to Zizou Bergs because he is my favorite on this list, but that's not, there's no math. Like you could tell me like the rest of them had significantly better years, but I got to talk to Zizou in the Middle East and I had a lot of fun doing that. So I guess I'm going to give it to him.
Rinderknecht is at 29.
Rinderknecht, that Wimbledon win over Zverev is
for sure. Rinderknecht not only has the Wimbledon win over Zverev, he also has the Shanghai final. And spoiler alert, that's why he's going to be my pick because, again, Arthur Rinderknecht turned 30 this year. And he had the best season of his career. And to be able to capitalize on the momentum built with that Wimbledon win and make the sort of run that he did in Shanghai, like to have 2 of those crowning moments that you can clearly define from his season. It's what, like, again, I know Luciano Darderi won 3 titles, and yes, I'm very happy my inception worked on you. That's exactly the sort of conversation we hope to inspire. Gab Diallo wins a grass court title, pushes Fritz at Wimbledon early in that event as well. Really good match there, so he certainly had a sneak good year inside the top 40. Munar, not just the Davis Cup, like Munar's top 15 or top 40, and the majority of his success this year came on hard courts. Sneaky good year for a Munar who, again, 28 years old. Moutet beats Fritz on the grass courts, beats Medvedev on hard courts, both DC and later on in the year. Like, Moutet had some moments as well. I'm going with Rinderknecht because his moments were the loudest on this list. But these were all players who had moments. Like, as you're trying to tell the story of this year, Muller was sneaking up to the top 30 in the first 2 months of the year. Darderi racked up the titles in July. Diallo on the grass. Again, Rinderknecht has his moments. Like, all of these guys were essential to telling the fabric because they pulled off an upset here. They found a streak of success there. That's what the sneaky good season category is all about, DK. So I'm going Arthur Rinderknecht. I have no problem with you taking take whomever you'd like.
You nominated him, so I guess he did something.
No, he had a good year. Again, Zizou Bergs finishes 43. Again, the 26-year-old Belgian, like to establish herself in the top 50 like this. Played a bunch of fun matches. The Djokovic match at the end of the year as well is one that comes to mind right away. Yeah, I have no problem with you taking Zizou Bergs.
My interview with Zizou Bergs, by the way, was about his Instagram page, and he told me that he wanted his social media platforms to have a, quote, vintage feel. I don't know what that means, but I certainly liked hearing it, and I like transcribing it. So
right.
shout out to Zizou Bergs and his Instagram.
Shout out indeed. Next category for you, comeback of the year. And I like to have fun with this category because I don't think there's just an easy he came back from injury pick here. Like, again, Brooksby, Manarino, Opelka Nori were the honorable mentions. That kind of gives you the vibe of, like, okay, back to relevance. I've got 5 nominees. I think the winner of this category is pretty obvious. Felix, back to elite status. Welcome back with how he ended his year, Cincinnati onwards, U.S. Open semis, makes the tour finals. Bublik, welcome back to relevancy, and now all of us have to be on Sasha Bublik watch because we know he can actualize the talent. Fritz, who was 20th in the points race going into the grass court season, and then had himself a run to get back to the top 8. Sinner, beating Alcaraz at Wimbledon to overcome the Sinner Alcaraz owns me, and, again, can I get over this in the head-to-head? Or Alcaraz overcomes match points to beat Sinner in the Roland Garros final. I think comeback of the year in this case is pretty clear.
Is it? I don't really. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Felix is probably the most it's the most standard definition of a comeback. I mean, someone who was went from, I don't know, someone who was not in a conversation to be in the top 8 and suddenly was not only in the top 8 but was looking like a credible title contender for a minute there at the ATP finals. I mean, there's the literal comeback from match points down from Alcaraz. That was a pretty impressive comeback, but that's not a comeback. I guess that's a comeback that happened in the year. That's not usually the way we define comeback. And then I guess you could also look at what Sinner was able to accomplish in the context of his 3-month break, coming back and winning Wimbledon, dethroning Alcaraz on his home, basically his home slam for the last 2 years. And the first time that Sinner ever won Wimbledon puts him 1 slam away from the career slam. That's another mark in favor of the ATP is that there's two guys now at the top of the game, both competing for the career slam in 2026. I don't know. I guess I'll pick. I don't know. I would pick Felix because I just feel like he's the one that is the most standard definition of a comeback to me.
Well, I'm glad you do pick Felix because it's so refreshing to have a guy who forever was the prospect of his class. First to do this since X, first to do this since Y, first to do this since Z. And since 2022, he just hadn't been that guy for a sustained stretch of time. And I went back and compared the resumes. Like, as good as he was to end that 22 season, he was just playing better players and beating them. Beating Zverev, beating Rublev, beating Demon as he did in New York, and just, again, working his way to that Paris final. Beating Zverev in the play-in match for the Tour final semifinal, again, as well. I have no problem with the Felix pick. The pick is the Alcaraz match. That's the defining match of the season. It's a defining moment of their rivalry to date. It was the first time we got to see those two with their current status, being the guys everyone is chasing, each of them ostensibly at the peak of their powers to date, going head-to-head, and it looking and feeling like we want those matches to feel. It capturing the zeitgeist of the entire sporting universe. It wasn't just us on tennis Twitter commenting on that third set. And it was blessed to be at French Open, so time zone-wise, it was perfect timing on a Sunday that everyone could stop and tune in. And it was a defining moment for these two. It was a defining moment for this tour. It's to your point, as you said in the grade, it's what salvaged this season being an A-. It was the comeback of the year, and it's what set off like, okay, these two are special, and now when they play, it's appointment viewing for all of us sport fans. And to me, you just have to have that reflected somewhere in the award ballot. So I think this is the obvious place to sneak it in. It was the comeback of the year in the most literal sense.
I mean, look, it's certainly the match of the year. It's certainly the ATP match of the year. It's no Anisimova Sabalenka at the year at the WTA finals, whatever. But I think if you're going to give I think comeback of the year should go to a player. It shouldn't go to a match, but fine. Okay. Right. Sue me.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, that's why if you want to hand it off to Felix, that's fine with me. I really like the Fritz comeback on the grass court season because it was a sneaky story through the first half of the year. Like, where is Taylor Fritz? And now he ends the year as the #1 American once again. However,
I mean, Tommy was injured, but okay.
Yeah. This is why the obvious pick is Alcaraz for coming match points to win the French Open final. Nevertheless, we move on from one storyline to the best storyline that we have available for us here. And certainly, again, some fascinating storylines. The honorable mentions, just to race through them again, the race to the year-end finals. Zverev's look at the number one ranking in those third, fourth months of the year. Fonseca's start to the year. Shelton winning in Canada, that was a sneaky, huge moment because Alcaraz and Sinner had won everything. And for the rest of, it was the first time that it was like, okay, those two aren't playing Canada, but everyone else is. Who can emerge from this field as the genuine viable threat to either of those guys? And Ben's the guy who emerges and wins that event and wins his first 1,000 level title. So that was a really cool storyline. The all-cousin final in Shanghai has to be an honorable mention. Again, already discussed Musetti's clay, Felix's ending, Bublik. All of the injuries, as I mentioned, Draper, Rune, Ruud at Roland Garros, Tommy, Fils, Tsitsipas, Dimitrov, Korda, Hurkacz. And yet I think there are three clear-cut storylines to pick from, DK. Sinner versus Alcaraz, the lack of a clear number 4, or just more broadly, and we've touched on it, but we can dive into it here if you'd like, the fall of the original next-gen ATP. And again, that crew was 1996 to 1998-99 range. None of them are 30 yet. And yet, if you're saying, are we going to see the best tennis from them that we've seen to this point in the future out of Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas, Rublev, Berrettini, Tiafoe, Shapovalov, Hurkacz, I think we all would say no, as opposed to saying yes. And that is a massive storyline, because that's a generation of top 8 players seemingly aging out so suddenly. Those are the three clear-cut top storylines of the year. And I turn to you. We kind of talked about this in the grade this season, but what's your number one?
One of the meanest things one Real Housewife can tell another is you have no storyline. That dates back to 2014, Real Housewives of New York City, season 6 reunion. Heather Holla Thompson yells at Aviva Drescher, you have no storyline. All we ever talk about is your fucking leg. Aviva Drescher, notably disabled, has a fake leg, a prosthetic leg. And all she ever did was talk about it. So just because you talk about it doesn't mean that it's a storyline. And just because these are moments do not make them storylines. I think the only storyline on the ATP tour that's like positive in terms of like best storyline is Sinner versus Alcaraz. There are like more, the other two are more like worrying, like harbingers of doom. If there's like a Harbinger of Doom award, maybe you would give it to the lack of a clear number 4, the continued decay of the original next-gen ATP. But I don't know if those were like storylines so much as like, because like the line is going down for me.
But I mean, I guess it should be big, most consequential storyline then. Maybe it's a categorization. Like the fall of the next-gen crew is consequential.
But do people even really care? I don't know.
Yes!
I think people care about Medvedev. They're a little bit like, there's like always weird discussions over Zverev, who like, whether it's a competing podcast always looking to like rehabilitate his image, or like other people kind of just looking at the reality that he's just simply not as good as the top 2 players on the ATP right now. I think the ATP right now starts and ends with Sinner and Alcaraz, and everything else is just window dressing. So I don't really think it's worth talking about the others, although I'm sure you will.
So you're right. Like Sinner Alcaraz is the pick because it's the thing we're all talking about casually.
It is the force multiplier. It is the thing that activates everything else.
And it's exceptional because every good sport, Brady or Manning, LeBron or Kobe, like Trout or Harper, like shout out baseball. You got to have these arguments. Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin. Like, you get to have Sinner versus Alcaraz now. And that's just, you said it perfectly.
Hollander versus Rosenov on the sexy hockey drama rivalry.
Absolutely. Like, you have everything you need in Sinner versus Alcaraz. Now, more consequential, I really like that the lack of clear number 4. All these stories carry over into 2026. That's the really fun part about all three of them and it's going to be able to drive off-season coverages, like, again, of that original next-gen crew, whom, if any, have an opportunity to return back to the top of the game. It's a fascinating conundrum because it never happens this fast, and it never seems to happen this broadly, where it was like all of them, except for maybe Zverev, took a collective step back this year. Sinner versus Alcaraz is the pick, so we can move on from there. Let's go to biggest surprise next, because certainly in a year with all sorts of upsets, we had some surprises. I got 4 for you. I wanted to put Team World beats Team Europe at Laver Cup just to grind your gears, but I didn't. I put it in the honourable mention. Bublik
I was surprised, but that would not count as the biggest surprise.
Bublik versus Sinner on the grass. Demon making a second consecutive tour finals. Maybe Griekspoor over Zverev and Indian Wells should be on there as well. But I've got 4 for you. I've got Bublik's rise. I've got Vashro winning Shanghai. I've got Menchik winning Miami, beating Fritz Djokovic consecutively over championship weekend to do so. Or the rapid decline of Daniil Medvedev, a guy who just felt built to be sustained. Like, to see it fall off this quickly. I think those are the 4 biggest surprises. What's your pick?
I mean, it's Vashro. Like, in a million years, like, you would never have picked Vashro to win a Masters, a title, much less an ATP Masters title. I mean, I think you could see hints of Medvedev's decline from the previous year. Obviously, this was a pretty big big leap forward in that direction. I think Menchik was certainly surprising, and I think, oh God, I want Menchik to be like a thing in the worst way. I kept interviewing him all year. I was like, no, but you're
still
like, I can feel it. Yeah, it still might be. It's still, I came away preferring Lehechka. Lehechka's a much better talker and a much more like magnanimous personality. But and then again, Bublik for me, it's less of a rise and just more of a resurgence. I don't consider this to be like his first rise. He's risen before. He is risen. So it's got to be Vashro. It's got to be Vashro.
I was going to go with Medvedev, but you're right. There were some seedlings of that decline in 2024. But like the 2023 U.S. Open where he beat Alcaraz in that semifinal, which I still think is maybe the best match we've seen him play. Like, that wasn't that long ago. And it's like he made the 24 Australian Open final, 2 sets to love down, beat Zverev in the semis. Like, that wasn't that long ago.
Was 2 sets up against Sinner in that final, lest we forget.
And it's just fallen apart, and it's physical, and it's the serve is just over these last 2 years completely decayed. It's at the point now where he has a new coach, and like, he was the sure thing. He was the world number 1. He's the Hall of Famer of that original next-gen ATP crew.
Would you vote for Medvedev to be in the Tennis Hall of Fame?
I think I would.
Based on his resume? Okay.
I would, and given the significance
alone
of him to his generation as well. It's like that has to matter. That's so consequential. The Cilic case is so fascinating to me as well. But Cilic never rose to world number 1. Medvedev legitimately rose to world number 1, and he is a Hall of Fame hardcourter, like a generational, not once in a generation, but a generational player on a surface, and that should be reflected in the Hall of Fame. So yes, I would vote for him. He was my original pick, but it's hard not to go with Vashro. So you made a good case. I'm going to switch my pick and go with you. I think Vashro wins Shanghai there. But do you see why, like, the Medvedev?
Oh yeah, it's certainly like the saddest part of 2025. Like, I don't know if it's a surprise. It was a surprise that I kept thinking that he would like dig out of it because he is so tenacious, and so that was kind of a surprise.
And then he made Indian Wells semis, and it was like, okay, maybe.
He did that big celebration when he beat Arthur Fils. Like, that's my moment of the year. That's how, if that's had themselves a moment, if certainly be there. And then I let Medvedev like just be lying sometimes. He'll just be like, "Oh no, I was just I had like this long drawn out story for why he did it." I'm like, "Come on, let's be honest."
Fair enough. All right, next up. Biggest missed opportunity. And again, certainly there were massive opportunities over the course of the year. I have 3 key cases here, though. Honorable mentions to Fritz, Ruud, Shapovalov, and everyone who entered Shanghai and left without a Masters title and had to watch Vashro and Rinderknecht compete for one. I have 3. Holger Rune, who, yes, it's tough to talk about it given the Achilles injury to end the year, but let's be clear. He didn't have the year he was looking for. Like Holger Rune, who still finished inside the top 15, which speaks to how high the floor is. I was certain, it's one of the things I was most wrong about this year, that Rune was going to have one of those fuck you seasons. It's like, oh, you guys think Alcaraz and Sinner are good? I'm on their level. Watch this. And other than the Barcelona title run, he didn't have a moment like that. So I think that's a missed opportunity, especially given how bad the rest of the field was. It was like, dude, the opportunity's for you there to catapult amongst it. He didn't do that. Jack Draper did do that, but his body just didn't allow him to capitalize and consolidate the position. So I do think it's not his own fault, but I think you have to put Draper in the player who missed the opportunity because you feel like he could be the next guy up. And then you have to put Zverev on this list because it was a legitimate storyline coming out of Australia. Holy shit, no Sinner for 3 months. Zverev might be the world number 1. And whether it was the loss to Griekspoor at Indian Wells, the loss to Fils in Miami, the loss to Berrettini in Monte Carlo, he couldn't capitalize. And you wonder if that's going to be the only opportunity he has now moving forward to have ever captured world number 1 status. He's my pick for this category. What say you?
Yeah, I think for Zverev, it's sort of like the bigness of the opportunity for me
exactly.
is sort of I'm about to disagree. The bigness of the opportunity to me is not that big because, like, what was the opportunity? It was the opportunity to be number one because Sinner was out for 3 months and could not compete. Like, even if he had gotten to number one, everyone would have pointed out that, well, he only got to number one because Sinner was out. Like, it's certainly like a hilarious. It's like a big fail. Like, if there's like a biggest fail award, like certainly could have failed up to number one in those 3 months, and he was not able to do that. So that's kind of funny. But I think the biggest missed opportunity is Draper because, like, he was just winding up to be what we thought Holger Rune was going to be, which was like the closest contender to Sinner and Alcaraz, and then just disappears. I mean, like, I remember like the pre-Wimbledon like hype, like he's coming back to his home slam. Yes, he lost, at Roland Garros earlier than we thought he was going to, but he's going to come to his home slam and really like, take names. And like, I feel like we just barely have seen him since. Like, it's just been such a letdown, especially because he played so well at the US Open last year. Like, we were really building towards something with him, and that was really a missed shot for him. And you never quite know how someone's going to come back from an injury. Not everyone is bionic like Taylor Fritz. Like, he might take a while to like kind of get back into gear. He's a lefty. It's just a different mechanical thing with him. And so I wonder where he is next year.
It's a fascinating topic. Again, a healthy Draper is going to be a first draft pick for a lot of things next week when we're talking who are you taking for Sinner versus Alcaraz, the sort of player you'd want to build. I have no problems with the case. Could have voted Rune as well. I feel good about all three of these Tier 1 cases. I'm going with Zverev because of the magnitude of the opportunity. That is, you're just not going to have an opportunity like that again. And unfortunately, he was unable to capitalize. Building off of our last topic, did the window close? Because certainly, again, this is where the next gen is going to feature prominently, and there are a bunch of honorable mentions. But let's talk about guys who felt like legitimate slam title windows. Sasha Zverev, you just wonder. Again, made that Australian Open final, loses in definitive straight sets. Bad loss to Djokovic at Roland Garros. It wasn't a factor the last two majors. Medvedev, all signs pointing downwards, not up. When are we going to see Tsitsipas healthy next? Is there even top 10 tennis, let alone slam-winning contention tennis left within him, a guy who, by the way, is still just 27 years old? And then you know who I'm going to throw on this list for the first time? I think it's the first time we can ever ask the question in his career, did the window close for Novak Djokovic to capture another major title? Is the gap between him and Alcaraz and Sinner, not between 2 out of 3, but in a 3 out of 5 set format that demands the utmost physicality in your 7th match of the week? Is he capable of that still? Like, I think those are the 4 guys you feel most prominently about. Who would you pick? Did the window close as your winner?
I mean, I think the problem is it's just so obviously Tsitsipas in this group. I mean, I think for Tsitsipas, it's like the game has quite literally passed him by. Like, the kind of tennis that Sinner and Alcaraz plays is not conducive to Tsitsipas winning a slam. Like, they can completely hit through and suffocate the kind of tennis that Tsitsipas is looking to play.
Well, you just can't have a glaring weakness, and he just does.
I mean, but from the back of the court, I mean, he just cannot compete with those. And we've seen it. Like, he's not close when he plays them in these big matches, and he's only regressed further in response to those disappointments. I mean, that is a hallmark of this next-gen ATP group, withholding Medvedev, because I just feel like the rest of you think of Zverev and you think of Tsitsipas, like 2 players who I think felt that they were owed quite a bit from the tour, that they were just going to be those next guys. And that's, in no small part due to the kind of preparation they were being given by the tour. Like, you guys are the next generation. You're the next guys. And with the timing of Nadal and Djokovic's ages, you think, and Federer's age, you think surely this is going to be like a runway for you guys to just take over and run the table. And Nadal and Djokovic and Federer all hung on just a couple of years longer, and it just paved the way for a next generation to come in and just run the table now. So it's got to be. It would be shocking to me to see Tsitsipas outside of, an odd run in Monte Carlo, to see him really like claw back, because the ground that he's lost is so much more significant than a Djokovic, a Zverev, even a Medvedev, who was like showing some signs of life at the end of last year or this year.
So you're probably right. My pick is Djokovic, because it's the first time in his career I have thought, oh my God, there are 2 guys who are clearly better than him. Like, clearly. No disrespect to Novak Djokovic, who's still so good at this age. But he's dealing with a 24 and a 22-year-old who are still ascending in their ability and hit the fucking cover off of the ball and just demand exceptional out of you at every moment. And we saw it. Like, Australia, body breaks down against Zverev. Roland Garros, body broke down by the time it felt like he reached the semifinals. Wimbledon's the one where you feel like he still has a chance. But U.S. Open, fourth major of the year, like you felt like he was still on fumes there. Like he's picking his spots more broadly. It's a second consecutive year where outside of the majors, he was pedestrian, certainly by his standards. Like he just doesn't lose that Miami match to Menchik ever before this year. I'm not saying the window did close, but it's the first time I've ever thought, oh my God, the window might have closed for Novak Djokovic. And that's why he wins this award, because of the significance of the thought, where it's like for the first time ever, Novak Djokovic isn't at worst tied for the best player in the world. And it's just like, it's third. Like it's a definitive third. And that's just a shocking thing.
I guess the difference for me is that if the window is closed for Djokovic, the window is locked for Tsitsipas. It's got bars, baby. It's like it is just.
No, you probably had the right pick, like I said. But again, that's why the Djokovic of it all wanted to bring him up somewhere. Next up, it's one of my favorite awards. Had themselves a moment, DK. Just again, those breakthrough, and I've got 7 nominees for this category. Fonseca start to the year. Next gen AO win over Rublev. Menchik wins Miami for that Fritz Djokovic weekend. Draper beats Alcaraz en route to the Indian Wells title. Bublik alive. You could say the Tommy Paul match in New York maybe best, or the Draper match Roland Garros. Felix, Cincy to the year-end finals. Shelton, that moment in Canada. Or Vashro wins Shanghai. Who's your pick?
I mean, look, I got to pick the star. And the star in this lineup is Joao Fonseca. I mean, I remember where I was, heading into the Australian Open, seeing Fonseca win the previous year's next-gen finals and get that first round against Rublev. It felt by no means like a gimme for Rublev. It felt like that Fonseca was going to show up. I did not expect him to. I think he beat him in straight sets, as I remember. And it was just like one of those arrival moments for someone who we talk about. I mean, if there is a number 4, it's like Fonseca in terms of like power rankings. Like who is the guy we discuss the 4th most often in men's tennis right now? It's Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, Fonseca. Like I think he's just the biggest star who has not won, like who's done very little. Like when you really look at the resume, but still, just you look at him and he's just the potential is so obvious that like that was the moment of the year for on that level.
Terrence Atman at Cincy moment. Nori Wimbledon semifinal moment. Menchik winning Miami was a moment because it kind of propelled them into a new tier of prospect. I mean, Vashro in Shanghai is the definition of a moment. But I agree with you. Fonseca just captured the imagination from I was there in Phoenix, where it was just like literally lines.
I knew you were going to say in Australia.
No, I was there in Phoenix. Lines of humans to just get an autograph or a glimpse of this guy. He's got to be on the award ballot somewhere. Could sneak him into our next category, Newcomer of the Year as well, where certainly, again, you got a fun class of prospects. Bublik finds his way onto another ballot. Vashro has to be in discussion here. Menchik, of course, the Miami title. Fonseca, Basel title. All the moments. Lerner Tien deserves a shout. Beats Medvedev at the Australian Open. Beats Zverev in Acapulco. Or maybe it wasn't Acapulco, but somewhere in February. Beats Rublev on the hard course. Beats Medvedev again, end of season. Wins his first title in the year as well. I mean, again, like it's easy to pick Fonseca or Menchik again, but I'll listen. If you want to pick Lerner, I'm down to go the Lerner route this time.
I made a face at one point during your monologue because I saw Alexander Bublik is on this list. Like okay. I thought I liked Bublik. I feel like you like him even more than I do.
No, I like his season. It was just that puzzling, that mystifying.
You and Prakash, the two biggest Alexander Bublik fans.
Yeah.
I think there is a really good argument for Lerner Tien because I feel like Fonseca, at least like I kind of knew I had more like a sense that he was going to be a newcomer, whereas like Lerner Tien, won that crazy match. I remember that match. I was on that match. That match lasted until, 11 in the morning Eastern time. It was crazy.
Still hasn't finished.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Some may say they're still playing. And then continued to be like a consistent name. I think it's a name that people really gravitate towards in tennis media. People they find him to be an interesting character and name for the future. They're really taken in by the talent. I still feel like Fonseca has more long-term oomph, so I would probably be more inclined to pick him. You seem like the type that would pick Tien over Fonseca.
Well, I think I picked Fonseca last year.
Oh.
I was debating picking Menchik because, again, it was just like, okay, you're part of the conversation now.
That was such a moment, too. When he won it, you just felt like this was like
And I'd like to
It
have
felt
that
less like a Djokovic fail and more like a Menchik win. And now in retrospect, it maybe more looks like a Djokovic fail, but I don't know. I would like to
No,
see more from him.
I thoroughly agree. I think people gravitate to Lerner because once you get to know him, the guy's a monomaniacal competitor. Like, he wants to slit your throat and watch. And it's fun
He's very
to have a guy like
California.
that. He also takes, like, the thing you want to do best, he just has a way to take that away. And he just puts pressure on you. Now, again, what is it going to look like on clay is a massive question to define his ceiling. But he's top 25 good on hard courts already. I put Lerner because I think his year was just one of those sneaky, like, again, there was a moment where Lerner had more top 10 wins than Medvedev, Zverev, Ruud, Rublev, like all of them. He just had more top 10 wins. He was a thorn in all their sides. Mm-hmm. I'm going Lerner Tien for my newcomer of the year, and I feel fine about it. And it leads me, DK, to another fun topic. The 21 and under prospects. Same route as we did on the women's show. I've got 3 tiers for you. And it's not quite as crowded as the women's tiers because I just feel better about the crop of rising talent we have on the women's side than I do on the men's side. But tier 1, I think you're going to win a title in the next a slam title in the next 10 years. Tier 2, I could see you making over-under half tour finals. I'll take the over. Tier 3, you're going to be a top 50 player for a really long time. Here's my list. Tier 1 of the 21 and under guys, just Joao Fonseca. Is that fine with you?
Just Joao, yes.
And you can put him tier 1? It's not crazy to do that? Okay,
no,
perfect.
No.
I like that. Tier 2, got 4 guys. Lerner Tien, Jakub Menchik, Arthur Fils, still sneaky, just 21, and I'm on the Rafa Hodar bandwagon. I've just committed to my position. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Those are the 4 men I'd put in tier 2.
I would still have to watch Rafa Hodar play, but I take your word for it that he is a tier 2 guy.
What about the other 3?
Yeah, no, I think they're certainly behind Fonseca, but above everybody else on this list.
Do you think the Lerner path is a demon hour path?
Possibly. I mean, that is an interesting consequence of the Demon Hour rise is that there is space now at 8 to 12 for a guy who doesn't necessarily have the most firepower, who can rely on just athleticism and competitiveness and tenacity. That is not typically like that. I don't feel like that's typically not ranked that high, especially given the increased power athleticism
100%.
index from the men. You wouldn't expect a Demon Hour. So that creates space for a Tien for sure.
100%. Tier 3, top 50 guys. Just give me yes now. Alex Mickelson.
Yes.
Ethan Quinn.
Yes.
Dino Prismic.
Maybe.
Jerry Shang.
Yes.
Alex Blocks.
I don't know.
Martin Landalusa.
I don't know.
Nikolai Budakov-Kiar.
I actually saw him play juniors.
Well, they're all about to play in the Next Gen Finals in 2 days, so don't worry.
Okay.
You get to watch plenty of them as the action kicks off. And again, guys like Sakamoto, Joe E.
Yeah, shout out to Ray Sakamoto, who I interviewed, by the way. I put him up at tier 1. Ray Sakamoto.
I like that. Last but not least, DK, your favorite category. Closest to popping off. Got 4 tier 1s for you. Hodar, just trust me. He belongs in the tier 1 list. Arthur Fils made back-to-back quarters, Indian Wells, Miami, then just got injured. We were robbed of him. If he's healthy, why couldn't he make a push in how open the landscape is? Fonseca to make that top 8 leap in 2026. Or healthy Jack Draper saying, no, I'm the 3. Here's my spot.
Who did Fils almost pop off at in Rome this year? Was it Tsitsipas? Didn't he get into a fight with? Because I just remember him gaslighting me after the match, and I was just like, what happened at the net with you and your opponent, Tsitsipas? ? And he was just like, oh no, nothing. We were fine. I'm like, excuse me, you were arguing for a full 5 minutes, and I was like,
2-6,
you're not
6-4,
gaslighting
6-2.
me, Arthur Fils. So that's it. I'm gonna give it to Joao Fonseca because I'm not giving it to someone who lied to me.
Fair enough.
I don't award liars on the Crack Rackets podcast.
I'm going Draper again. I'm actually going Hodar because I'm just gonna push all the chips into the middle. No, I'm going Draper because if Jack Draper's healthy, I legitimately think he's the 3rd best guy, and I think he's good enough to threaten the other 2 as well, right away, immediately in 2026.
Yeah, I just worry where he's at because granted, he came back pretty quickly. He started this year injured. I don't mean to put that in quotes, but I thought it was worse than he was able to play for the first 4 months of the season and didn't seem to be that hobbled by it. But then now he's been off for most of this year, and I don't know how he hits the ground running in January. I feel like I should pick Hodar because you didn't, and then if I win, then that's funnier.
Well, all I have to say is just I'll tell you when we're off, Mike. But trust me, as it relates to Hodar. With that said, DK, Those are your 12 awards. Under an hour 15. I'm going to get you out of here by 4:05 as promised, my friend. Any final thoughts before we wrap today's show?
No, I mean, this was just a wacky schmacky year. And I kind of just want to see more like...
Okay, wait. I'm going to pause you. Wacky schmacky. Didn't my award ballot reflect that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess even the moments we did get were just not. I feel like we had so much more to say about the women, whereas for these guys, like everyone kind of had like a half moment, like they had like a mome. They didn't have like a full moment. Like I don't know. They were not performances. They were just a perform. At least once a podcast, I can get Gruskin to just fully break.
A mome is really funny. That's really good.
The best moments from the ATP. I mean, like that's really what we had. I mean, that's what we were able to kind
You're
of
not wrong. You're not wrong. The best jokes come from a place of truth. That's very funny. All right. Well,
so I want to see stronger stuff from 3 to 8 next year. I don't want to be like. I don't want to be going down to the last minute for the.
The fun part is 3 through 8 feels open too, so it'll be a race to try and grab them. Hopefully, people can hold on to them for longer in the year. But yeah, plenty of moments, all with you all season long. So thank you, my friend DK, for joining us. Obviously, for these award shows, and yeah, we're gonna get you again on the show again before the year ends as well. There's definitely some off-season meat on the bone for us to enjoy. Of course, the reason we can enjoy all of our coverage here at Cracked Racquets because of the tireless efforts of our super producer Daniel Westhoff. What sort of a job does he do, DK?
Oh, he does an editing job. My head of household.
A shout out to Westhoff for the job he does. A thank you, of course, as well to the support we get from our friends at the Laurel Springs School. With that said, for the fantastic David Kane, our super producer Daniel Westhoff, and from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Believe Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. That's your ATP Award Show. DK, what do we tell all of our listeners?
That's the break. Now I can do visual puns.
I like it. And you'll have to watch on YouTube to see them. And we will see you all next time. Thank you as always, DK.
До свидания.